By April 1994, the nudge-nudge, wink-wink understanding between civilian politicians, pro-democracy groups and the military had broken down. The civilian opposition had to face the consequences of their naivety. Rulers do not easily give up power. Rather, power must be snatched away from them. Abiola's supporters had also demonstrated the usual Nigerian civilian weakness of falling into every trap that the military set for them. The politicians now realized belatedly that they had made a mistake by not maintaining a united front in support of the June 12 election, or the ING. Had they called Babangida's bluff and allowed the ING to stabilize and conduct free elections, the military would have had no pretext to force out the ING and resume military rule. 6 months had passed and Abacha had not made any announcements regarding the fate of the annulled June 12 election. A frustrated Tinubu met Dia and demanded explanations. Tinubu claimed he told Dia, "This is my last visit to you. If you are not in this government to actualize June 12, you have betrayed us. You have betrayed the masses of Nigeria and you will not come back the same." When Dia asked Tinubu whether this statement was a declaration of war, Tinubu replied by telling him to interpret it as he pleased. On May 15, 1994, a group of veteran politicians, Awoist and pro-democracy groups formed an umbrella organization called the National Democratic Coalition, NADECO. It was the 70-year-old Anthony Enahoro who proposed NADECO's formation to Ajasin at a meeting of Afenifere, which accepted the idea. Although he was not a Yoruba, Enahoro, an Esan, was a veteran Awoist politician from the pre-independence era who had proposed a successful motion which eventually led to Nigeria's independence in 1960. He had also been charged with treason along Awolowo in 1962. He then fled to the United Kingdom, but the British government repatriated him to face trial in Nigeria. He was convicted alongside Awolowo and imprisoned, but was released by the military government in 1967. Like Enahoro, many of the Awois in NADECO had been former members of the Action Group. NADECO's 70-year-old deputy leader, Abraham Adesanya, was one of the Awolowo's defense lawyers at his treason trial in 1962. He was also the first person to visit Awolowo and commiserate with him on July 10, 1963, after Awolowo's first son died. Several retired military officers, such as the former Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant General Julius Akinrinade, Major General Olufemi Olutoye, and Air Commodore Dan Suleiman also joined NADECO. The organization's aim was to end military rule immediately and campaign for Abiola to become president. Abiola wanted to be president but could not make up his mind whether confrontation, compromise, or backdoor deals was the best way of achieving that objective. At first, Abiola insisted on the validation of the June 12 election results. Then, according to NADECO's Ajasin, he changed his mind and opted to accept fresh elections, during which he would sponsor another candidate, Lateef Jakonde, who would resign and allow Abiola to contest the presidency. Abiola then changed his mind again and went back to seeking validation of the annulled election results. NADECO members were frustrated by Abiola's vacillation and decided to take a more confrontational stand against the military. They urged Abiola to be resolute, stay the course, and fight for his mandate. NADECO gave Abacha's government a 15-day deadline, expiring on May 31, 1994, to resign and install Abiola as president. NADECO's backing seemed to reinvigorate Abiola, and he too changed his attitude and became more hostile to the military. He appeared more resolute than before.
In view of all this, I find the conclusion unfortunate but inescapable that the federal military government is guilty of bad faith, pure and simple. No one has accused me of any offense against any known electoral law or regulation. The people of this country went to polls on Saturday, June 12, 1993, and without let or hindrance chose me as their president. Didn't they?
Abiola's renewed agitation for the presidency emboldened the politicians. The former Senate President, Ame Ebuti, issued a statement reconvening the Senate, which Abacha had dissolved 6 months earlier. Within a few days, more than 300 members of the House of Representatives reconvened in Lagos and issued a statement supporting Ebute's position. State legislatures in Delta, Kano, Lagos, and Katsina states also reconvened. Several other political groups mobilized as well, including the Eastern Mandate Union, the National Unity Organization of Nigeria (NUON), led by General Obasanjo, the Democratic Alternative, Muslim Rights Concern, and the National Association of Sea Dogs. At a Nigerian Institute of International Affairs event in Lagos in June, Abiola whipped up the audience by rhetorically asking them, "Are you ready for my presidency?" The audience chanted yes back at him. When someone asked him when, he replied, "I will be sworn in on the first anniversary of the election, and then let the heavens fall." The government did not take Abiola seriously. Diaz said that Abiola was just joking. He doesn't mean it. I know him very well. He's my good friend. I know he can't do it. I think all those things he's saying are mere threats. As Nadeco's May 31st deadline approached, Nadeco member Bola Tinubu vowed that if Abacha failed to call on Abiola to form a new government before the end of the month, the lovers of democracy in the country will not hesitate to make this country ungovernable for the present administration. Nadeco's confrontational stance put the government on red alerts. The Chief of Army Staff, Major General Chris Ali, ordered aggressive surveillance at military barracks and at locations in or near military units. He also ordered civilians to be expelled from all military barracks. The Director of Defense Information, Brigadier General Fred Chijuka, subtly warned Abiola by telling reporters that government knows what to do if he carried out his threats. The Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Kumasi, released a strongly worded statement in which he described Nadeco as an illegal organization and warned, "Any person, whether a politician or a retired military officer or a pro-democracy crusader who thinks he's in a position to install another government is advised in his own interest to tread with caution, as security agents are prepared to act decisively on such matters." He added that there would be grave consequences for these treasonable acts. Yet Tinubu continued to insist that Abacha must resign. Enough is enough of the military. When asked what would happen if the government did not resign by May 31st, Tinubu replied, "Confrontation. There will be confrontation with the military." The government then started cracking down on opposition groups. Security forces arrested Ebute and charged him with treason. Next, they raided Obasanjo's farm in Ota on June 4, 1994 to prevent the inauguration of NUON. In the space of 1 week, 13 Nadeco members were arrested or asked to submit to interrogation, including Ajasin Enahoro, Bola Ige, Christian Ono, Jonah Jang, and Dan Suleiman. As security forces started rounding up pro-democracy activists, Abiola became more defiant. He dared security forces to come and arrest me. "I will be sworn in as president of Nigeria," he added. "They have no business arresting those they are arresting. If they want anything, let them come for me. No bastard can do that." But the security forces did not respond to Abiola's challenge and left him alone. The most the police did was to place Abiola's house and business premises under 24-hour surveillance. As more and more politicians and pro-democracy campaigners fell into the security forces' dragnets, Tinubu went into hiding. However, he continued to grant interviews to local and foreign media from his hiding place while security forces hunted for him. Tinubu claimed that he was receiving threatening calls from an unknown person. One of the callers warned him, "We know that you are meeting. You must stop that meeting or we will deal with you appropriately." His house in Victoria Island, Lagos was petrol bombed. After accepting that his life was in danger and Nigeria was no longer safe for him, he disguised himself by dressing like a northerner with a turban and babanriga. After bidding farewell to Abiola's wife, Kudirat, who initially did not recognize Tinubu in his disguise, he fled into exile after a motorbike escaped in the early hours of the morning across Nigeria's border into the neighboring Benin Republic. Nadeco opened their own underground railroad of sorts by creating secret escape routes through which their members fled into exile to avoid the security forces. Support for Abiola's renewed claim for the presidency was not unanimous among Yorubas. Former head of state General Obasanjo, who had attended the Baptist Boys High School with Abiola, was not an Abiola fan. Obasanjo said of Abiola, "I know him very well, much more than all of you. He was my classmate, but I don't think he's the messiah Nigeria is looking for." Obasanjo's comment caused the Abeokuta Brains Trust to join the debate. Abeokuta is something of an artistic, intellectual, and political hub in Nigeria. Most countries, let alone one town, will be proud to boast of the eminent personalities that have emerged from Abeokuta. The town's famous citizens include Africa's first Nobel Prize laureate, Professor Wole Soyinka, former head of state General Obasanjo and Ernest Shonekan, Fela Anikulapo Kuti and his brother Beko Ransom Kuti, the chairman of the opposition campaign for democracy. Yoruba traditional rulers also made various contradictory pronouncements about Abiola. Following a meeting between Babangida and traditional rulers on July 2, 1993, the foremost Yoruba traditional ruler, the Oni of Ife, Okunade Sijuwade, had threatened that Yorubas would succeed if Abiola was not declared president. Less than 1 month after Abacha seized power in November 1993, the same Oba Sijuwade, who had threatened to pull his people out of Nigeria, led 18 of the Yoruba Obas to Dodan Barracks on a courtesy visit to Abacha and commended him for preempting the forestalling the imminent state of war and disintegration in Nigeria. The Oba of Lagos, Adeyinka Oyekon, also wrote a letter to Abacha telling him, "It is by the grace of Allah that as the crowning of all your achievements, you should become head of state and commander-in-chief." Such Yoruba flip-flopping continued into 1994. Nadeko had called for a boycott of the ward elections for delegates to be elected to the Constitutional Conference. On May 19, 1994, Yoruba traditional rulers met in the palace of the Awujale of Ijebu, Sikiru Adetona at Ijebu Odi. The Yoruba traditional ruler supported Nadeko's call to boycott the Constitutional Conference elections. However, 3 days later, another group of Yoruba traditional rulers met in Ibadan with Dia, the military administrator of Ogun State, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Akintondi, and the former military governor of the Western Region, Major General Robert Adeyinka Adebayo. At the meeting, the Alake of Egbaland, Oyebade Lipide, scolded Dia, "You are our son. We see how your fellow northerners worship their emirs. Have you shown the same respect for us?" After Dia assured them that the annulled June 12 election would be discussed at the Constitutional Conference, this group of traditional rulers told the public to ignore the earlier May 19 statement calling for a boycott. Conflicting messages from the Yoruba traditional leaders caused tragic comedy consequences for Yoruba candidates for the Constitutional Conference. Olufalaye was elected as a delegate to the conference in his Akure local government area of Ondo State. However, after being declared winner, Falaye refused to accept victory or his place as a delegate to the conference. The Yoruba's lack of cohesion also disappointed others who felt let down by the Southwest and were reluctant to throw their weight behind a cause whose leaders could not get their house in order. They recalled that Abiola had warmly embraced Abacha on national television just 6 months earlier. How could people risk their lives in a struggle against the man with whom Abiola was in alliance so recently? After the experience of 1993, many people from other parts of Nigeria sat on the fence to see the depth of Abiola's conviction before taking risk on his behalf again. A former majority leader in the dissolved Delta State House of Assembly, Aneke Ifemini, said, "We want to see Abiola's seriousness before we can support him. We wish him good luck and hope he can stand by his words." Many in the military also did not believe that the politicians and pro-democracy campaigners were sincere. Abiola was doing all the right things, but at the wrong time. He failed to grasp that momentum is not an automatic device that he could control and switch on and off at will at a time and place of his choosing. Political momentum was with him in mid-late 1993, but instead of riding its wave, he allowed it to dissipate, then tried to reactivate it 12 months later. In 1994, Abiola belatedly did what he should have done in 1993, confront the military, galvanize public opinion, and try to make the country ungovernable for the military. In contrast, what he did in 1993, go abroad and seek international support, and was more appropriate for 1994. By the time he woke up in 1994, the venom and heat of the opposition to military rule had substantially cooled. He was retroactively trying to resuscitate a pro-democracy movement that had lost steam in the ensuing 11 months. He wrote to US Vice President Al Gore on June 3rd to inform him of his intention to form a government on or before June 12. In the letter, Abiola requested US support for his government and urged the US to sustain the visa ban it imposed on Nigerian government officials and to pressure the Nigerian government to refrain from arresting pro-democracy campaigners. His letter was unlikely to make much headway in the US, as Western countries usually support governments, not individuals. This is especially the case with individuals who are opposition figures. Abacha ignored Nadeko's May 31st deadline. Both sides waited to see what the other would do. The military anticipated some form of organized protest or resistance on June 12, 1994, the first anniversary of the annulled election. Dia admitted there was apprehension as all waited to see what Nadeko would do beyond the terminal date of the ultimatum. Perhaps there was going to be an insurrection or some other form of active resistance to the government. Abacha and Abiola were finally going to face off. The nation waited for either man to make the first move, like a crowd waiting to see which of the two Wild West gunslingers would draw their weapon first.